Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In this episode there are 4 stories. First is how an assistant principal and bus driver gets revenge on an entitled family. And the second story is why you should always lend a helping hand to someone who needs it. I hope you stay for all the stories today and subscribe for future videos. This story is titled My Dad's Revenge. This one's titled My Dad's Ultimate Revenge on an Entitled Family. Backstory: my dad is a high school assistant principal. It is currently his first year at a new school. It is a much better school than the last one he was at, which was overpopulated, drug-filled, and many of the students there had to have free or reduced lunches. There were fights almost every week, and my dad had to suspend kids almost every single day. His new school is much better, with just 2 incidents all year, one with an autistic kid who had an episode, and the one I'm about to tell you about. To clarify, any dialogue I might include will obviously not be 100% correct. The original incident took place about 2 months ago, and I am not 100% sure what started it. It could have been the bus driver bumping into the entitled girl while he was dropping her off, or he told off the entitled girl for saying something rude. But she got pissed and texted the entitled mom about it. The entitled mom came out of her home and started yelling at him, so he just drove off. The next morning, the bus driver went to pick up the entitled girl, but when he got to her driveway, she was not there. The entitled mom, entitled brother, and the entitled sister were there. He opened up the door to ask where the girl was, and that is when all 3 of them boarded the bus. Entitled girl is a junior, I think. Her older brother was around 22 years old, and her older sister was in college. These people were all adults, and all 3 of them started screaming at the poor bus driver, threatening him, calling him slurs, and telling him off. The rest of the kids on the bus were expectedly scared. The moment the 3 of them got off the bus driver sped away. The one thing the entitled family forgot to think about was the fact that there are 4 HD cameras equipped with audio sensors on every bus in the county. They caught everything. The poor dude got the rest of the kids to school and went straight to the front office. My dad was pissed. He got the video feed from the bus, called the school cop who called some other cops, and had the entitled mother's butt arrested for malicious harassment, intimidation, trespassing, and a few other things. My dad's principal let my dad have control over the whole situation because he knows my dad does not mess around with these kinds of things. So my dad helped the bus driver get some revenge. First, he had the entitled girl switch to a different bus route so she could not mess with the bus driver anymore, and then he had the entitled brother, entitled sister, and the entitled mother permanently banned from the school grounds. And then he gave the bus driver a month of paid time off. These were just petty, if that. Working with their lawyer, my dad got statements from most of the kids who were on the bus, and they decided to press charges against only the entitled mother and the entitled brother, who apparently had been in the middle of a 6-month probationary period for a different crime. So he was essentially guaranteed jail time going into the trial. Nobody expected the entitled mom to get any more jail time than a week, if that. My dad, the principal, and the school cop were all in the courthouse in case they needed to be called as witnesses, which they were not. Their lawyer made his remarks, and the entitled mom's lawyer just tried to reduce her sentence because he knew she was going to lose. But the judge surprised everyone when he gave the entitled mom a 30-day sentence. He had made it very clear to her that she had threatened the life of a man, endangered kids, and trespassed on school property for no reason besides that the bus driver told off the entitled girl and that she should be punished accordingly. My dad and his principal were trying not to cheer, but that was not even the best part. The entitled brother skipped his trial. They were back-to-back trials, so there is no way he could have forgotten. The judge immediately issued a bench warrant for his arrest. He was caught the next day in the entitled mother's house, and in the end, he was given a year in prison for breaking his probation, skipping trial, and for the same charges as his mother. If that is not pro-revenge, I do not know what is. As for the entitled girl, she switched schools. This one's titled, Oh, It Is Not Your Job. Your job? It is now. My dad was a mechanic for 20+ years. And for as long as I can remember, I drove him nuts because I would go around the house with a screwdriver to take everything apart because I wanted to see how it worked. As I grew older, I developed an affinity towards computers and electronics, which led me to be that kid in high school who changed his grades, crashed the school district servers, and used the Netson command with great success. I would spend my weekends either with my grandparents and uncle working on science projects or dragging my dad outside to help me fix my car. I joined the U.S. Army in March of 2004 and went into communications, or commo for short, where I managed to go from private when I joined to sergeant by the time I returned from my deployment at the beginning of 2007. After returning home, I was subsequently transferred from a light infantry unit to a mechanized infantry unit and placed in charge of the battalion. Commo because the current person running the commo shop was scheduled to retire in a few months, and I was the only other NCO. This is where things got interesting, and my commo overseas mechanics revenge story starts. As anyone else that was in the U.S. Army can attest to, every Monday is or was motor pool maintenance, which essentially means go make sure all the tanks, Bradley fighting vehicles, or anything else where the motor works the way it should. This included testing all the radios and communication equipment as well. If it did not work, we filled out forms with the correct shop and have them fix it. All the issues would later be consolidated into a report that the leadership team would review. If a vehicle was on the reports, the leadership team wanted to know why it was not fixed. I ran my shop using the same approach my dad taught me, which was figure it out and do not come to me with a problem unless you have a solution. One Monday morning, shortly after taking charge of the commo shop, one of my soldiers came to me with a problem he could not figure out and asked if I could help him. I agreed and followed him over to the BFE that was giving him problems. After a few hours of troubleshooting, we finally traced the problem to the BFV slip ring. We double and triple checked that indeed it was the problem because 1, slip rings in general have a low failure rate, and 2, it was not something we could fix on our own. It requires help from mechanics because the slip ring required taking apart the interior of the BFV turret to actually get to it. So I went to the mechanics to get their help so we could fix the problem. This is when I learned the mechanics did not like the commo shop. I was essentially told by the motor chief to buzz off, and the slip ring is a commo issue, and it is the commo shop job to fix it, not theirs. I was pissed at the response and tried to insist that we needed the help. However, I was promptly shut down and told to pound sand. And at this point, I was beyond pissed. I tried the official way. I even swallowed my pride and asked him nicely. Both times I was crapped on. I decided I was going to play global thermonuclear war and teach him a lesson that neither he nor anyone else in the shop would forget. So I went to my guys and told them I would be back in about an hour because I needed to run home and grab some stuff. When I got home, I went directly for the garage and started packing all the wrenches, impacts, and sockets that I could fit into my portable toolbox. I also loaded up the portable air compressor and any extension cords I could find and made my way back to the motor pool. Once I got back to the motor pool, I had my guys locate every extension cord they could find around the office because I could only find one in my garage, and to help me run the power out to the BFE that we were going to fix ourselves. Meanwhile, I also had 2 guys run to the HQ and find me 2 of the largest empty coffee cans they could find. I ended up having to tell them twice because the first time they thought I was joking. They could not understand why I needed a coffee can of all things. When they returned with the coffee cans, I had everything in place. I had power, compressed air, tools, and a place to neatly put all the bolts, nuts, and washers that I was about to remove. Under normal circumstances, I would only remove the things that absolutely had to be removed. The fewer things to put back together, the better. But these were not normal circumstances, and I had absolutely no intention of putting anything back together. It was about lunchtime, and I decided my way of fixing this issue probably was not the best example to set for my team, so I sent them on lunch and told them that I would handle the issue so they could focus on the other vehicles when they got back. For the next few hours, I proceeded to dismantle every single bolt I could find and remove the seats, interior plates, shelves, pretty much anything that was not electrical or commo related got removed. I would then place all of the newly removed hardware into the coffee can. By the time I reached the turret, I had filled up both coffee cans with nuts, bolts, and washers, so I had to go find something else to start putting the stuff in. Luckily, we had Ziploc bags by the dozen laying around the office. I grabbed a couple of those and went back to having fun taking apart the BFE. I finally reached the slip ring and managed to luck out. I did not have to replace the slip ring after all. It turns out the mechanic did not install one of the cable mounts, and one of the commo cables got snagged and subsequently cut. It probably took me less than 15 minutes at that point to replace the cable and the missing cable mount. Once I replaced the cable and made sure all of the other communications equipment worked and all the commo systems checked out, my job was done. Everything that I had taken out of the BFV was then gently and neatly stacked into the interior of the BFV. I put the lids on the coffee cans, zipped up the bags, pulled out my trusty Sharpie, and wrote bolts on each of them. Once everything was tidied up, I went off to find the owner of the BFE and let him know that his commo issue was fixed, but he should probably have a mechanic look at his BFE because I had to disassemble some, and by some I meant most, of the vehicle in order to get to the part I needed to replace, and I could not remember how everything went back together. I stared out of my office window for the rest of the day waiting for the mechanics to get around to looking at the BFV. I still remember the reaction of the motor chief when he looked inside the vehicle, and if I did not know any better, I could have sworn that his head rotated around 3 times and darn near popped off. His reaction was absolutely priceless. I knew he was about to storm into my shop in a fit of rage, so I got up and decided it was probably best to meet him outside in the motor pool. As soon as I reached earshot distance, he started screaming and demanding I put the vehicle back the way I found it. However, I was having none of that. I simply shook my head and told him that it was a mechanical issue now, and it was not my job, and how I asked for the help in the beginning and was told no because it was not your job. I told him that I am just a commo guy that did not know what needed to be removed, so I could fix the commo issue in the slip ring, so I removed everything, and if someone from your team would have been there, I think this whole misunderstanding could have been avoided. That vehicle remained on the weekly report for the next 3 weeks, while they figured out what bolt went where. However, after that incident, I was never told that it is not my job ever again, and the mechanics were more than willing to help me fix any issues that came up. This story is titled, I Rented a Fake Apartment and Accidentally Got ProRevenge. So, this happened a long time ago, and it's probably okay to post here. It was November 2009, and I was jamming to I Got a Feeling by the Black Eyed Peas while looking for a cheap apartment. I found a great listing on Craigslist and arranged for a viewing. I met the landlady, a portly woman with a Betty Page haircut. I wasn't there for the company, however, but for the cheap room. It wasn't great looking, but it was affordable, so I told her I was interested. She said the place was mine if I could get a deposit by the end of the day. I rushed to the bank and grabbed $450, about half a month's rent. She and I signed a standard lease, and I asked when I could get a key to move in. She said in a couple of days, as the current tenant had yet to collect all of his stuff. So, I was sleeping on the couch at a buddy's place for now, and just chilling, seeing sights, and enjoying the first few weeks in a new city. A couple of days passed, and I hadn't heard from the landlady. I got frustrated and left a few irritated voicemails, but alas, I was ghosted. Finally, she left me a voicemail apologizing, saying she couldn't rent the place to me. I started to get angry, but I'm a pretty cool customer, so I did some research. I found out my rights and discovered that if someone backs out of a lease without a legal reason, the other party is entitled to double the deposit they placed. So, I figured she owed me about $900. I left even more messages and emails, but again I got no response. She was ghosting me. I was fed up. I had just accepted a new job, but it didn't start until the turn of the month. I'd guess it was about the 3rd week of November 2009. I had some spare time, so I hopped on the bus, bought a magazine, and sat at the bus stop across from the rental house. I waited for a couple of hours, but man, was it worth it. I saw her showing the unit to another unsuspecting renter. I kept my cool, waited for her to finish with the newest renter, and made my way over to the house to confront her. As soon as she saw me, she started wailing about how the tenant changed their mind, and that's why she couldn't rent to me. I'd heard enough. I squared my stance directly opposite this clearly upset con artist and said, "Now, you listen to me. You will get me $900 as required by law by the end of the day, or I'll go directly to the police station and let them deal with you." Her face turned pale for a minute. I thought she was going to faint right in front of me. She said, "Hold on, I'll get you your money." I remember thinking, wow, that was easier than I expected. She went upstairs, since the unit was a basement apartment in the house she was living in, and I kid you not, she handed me a wad of cash and said, "Here, this is ruining my Christmas, but here." She practically pushed me off balance as she shoved the messy wad of cash into my hands. I said, "Thank you, good day," took the money, counted it, and walked away. I didn't turn around or look back. I got on the first bus that stopped nearby, heading back toward my friend's house. Not until I was home did I calm down and realize it was going to be a sweet Christmas, all thanks to a lying, deceitful cheapskate. However, this is not the end of the revenge. About a week later, I got a phone call from a friend asking if the lady in the news was the same person I got the double deposit from. I was like, what? Sure enough, it turned out this lady was running the same scam on a bunch of other victims in parallel. I was mortified. Not because I almost got scammed, but because it occurred to me that the money I got was someone else's money, and they might be homeless for the holidays. I went to the police station where, I kid you not, there was a line of crying people filing reports of being scammed by this woman. I felt awful. When it was my turn, I spoke to the intake officer and laid it all out. How I fell for it. How I left a snotty voicemail, how I staked out the rental to confront her, and how I demanded double the money back. I told the officer that I took some of the money that belonged to the other victims. She looked at me and said, "Man, you were the only one smart enough to confront her in a reasonable way. You earned that money, don't worry about it." A young lady who was now homeless and desperate overheard and, as I was leaving the police station, approached me and said, "Hey, did you get your money back from that crook?" I replied, "Actually, I got double my deposit from her when I threatened her with the police." The girl blinked a couple of times, grinned, started a slow clap, and announced to the other victims waiting to give a statement, "This guy took her for double the deposit." I cringed, but then, in the most unexpected turn of events, the line of victims began applauding. I suppose they realized that, while their money was gone, someone had really gotten back at her, and that made them happy. They cheered, I felt better, the cops laughed, and all of us, there had to be 20 people, had a joyful, cosmic moment of holiday schadenfreude at her expense. I left the police station with a clean conscience and a smile on my face, and I enjoyed every last penny of that dishonest woman's ill-gotten cash. This is one of those stories where everyone literally claps. The original poster also provided a link to a news article about this scamming lady, and I can't believe it's real. I'll leave it in the description box for all of you who care to take a look. This next story is titled, "My Uncle Took Revenge on Behalf of My Parents." As the title suggests, this didn't happen to me, but this is the story of how my uncle avenged my parents. My parents had me when they were quite young, not teenagers anymore, but barely out of that age bracket. My mom and dad met in college, and that's also when they had me. While my parents were in their courses, I mostly stayed with my grandparents. The whole family lived in the same area, and the college wasn't far away. My parents were still young and liked to go out with friends on occasion. When the following happened, I was a few years old. They occasionally frequented a bar. A drunk guy there groped my mom and didn't take no for an answer. My dad stepped in and stopped the guy, and half an hour later, all seemed forgotten. The music was loud, the bar was crowded, and then someone in the crowd hit my dad with an empty glass pitcher square in the face. He collapsed, but in the semi-darkness and over the music, no one knew who did it. My dad was taken to the hospital with a broken nose and a heavy concussion. He couldn't see who attacked him, and his memory, between the alcohol and being hit in the head, was fuzzy. They considered the guy who had harassed my mom, but they didn't know him, nor did they see him anywhere leading up to that moment, let alone have any evidence. So, they pressed charges against an unknown person, but there was virtually nothing anyone could do. A few days later, the creep who grabbed my mom approached her on campus. It turned out he was in the same college as my parents. He made a few veiled comments, leaving little doubt that he was the one who hit my dad in the face. The jerk let my mom know that my dad should mind his manners next time, that the little touching he'd done didn't hurt anyone and wasn't that bad, and that if he wanted to do it again, he would, and maybe more. My mom was horrified, of course. She went home and told my grandparents, my dad, and his parents, but no one could do anything. It was a he said, she said situation, and my mom didn't even know the guy's name. She cried a lot at the time and didn't know what to do. She was also afraid of going to classes or out alone. I only remember that time vaguely since I was just a little kid, but I can recall my dad in the hospital with a broken nose, and my mom crying a lot. My dad, of course, was just as angry and humiliated as my mom. No one knew what to do, and everyone was treading on eggshells around each other. That's where my uncle enters the stage. My uncle, my mom's brother, lived on the other side of the country. He was a private investigator and was, of course, the last one to hear the full story. But the moment he heard that someone had threatened his little sister, he was on his way home. After hearing the full story, my uncle knew it would likely be hard to get the guy on harassment, assault, or threats without evidence. My uncle had my mom point out the guy from afar on campus. It took a few days to find him, but then my uncle started to follow that despicable person. My uncle took sick days and all his vacation time, investing every second possible to find out everything about the harasser. He even approached the creep in another bar and became drinking buddies with him over several weeks. My uncle uncovered all sorts of illicit behavior, possession, consumption, and distribution of drugs, theft, and a few other misdemeanors and small-time crimes. He could have put the guy away for that, but my uncle always said that if he sent the guy to prison, it would be for touching my mom and hurting my dad. And that's what he did. One night, while out drinking with his new buddy, my uncle got the harasser extremely drunk, and they ended up in my uncle's motel room. He got the harasser to incriminate himself on video, rattling off a list of illegal activities he was up to. My uncle, of course, had pretended to be a crook too. Among the stories the guy told was how he groped some woman and hit her boyfriend with a pitcher of beer. Now, something needs to be said. In my country, secretly recording someone is illegal, and under some circumstances, like if the police do it, it's not admissible evidence in court. But my uncle knew the laws exactly. Paradoxically, the situation is different if it's not only audio, but also video. And my uncle had the creep on camera, confessing the next day my uncle turned himself in to the police with all of his collected evidence. Secretly filming people was still a crime, though the video could be used as evidence in court since my uncle was not affiliated with the police or any government agency. When the criminal and civil trials were over, the guy got 6 years in prison and had to pay damages to my mom and dad. My uncle was slapped with the equivalent of a $2,000 fine for secretly filming the creep. Money well spent, he always said. As a reader dropping a comment on these stories, I'm totally hooked by the mix of clever revenge, standing up to entitled behavior, and straight-up justice served. These tales are equal parts infuriating and satisfying, with some real moments of brilliance. Here's my take on each, written like I'm chiming in on a forum. My dad's revenge. Holy cow, this assistant principal dad is a hero. The entitled family ganging up on the bus driver with slurs and threats is absolutely vile, especially with kids on the bus watching. Those HD cameras were their downfall. Love how technology caught them red-handed. Switching the entitled girl's bus route, banning the family from school grounds, and giving the driver a month of paid leave? That's some solid petty revenge. But the real kicker is the mom getting 30 days in jail and the brother getting a year for skipping his trial while on probation. The judge laying down the law like that? Chef's kiss. Gotta say, the entitled girl switching schools was probably her best move. This story's a masterclass in using the system to deliver justice. Anyone else got tales of school staff taking down bullies like this? Oh, it is not your job. Oh man, this one's gold. The commo guy dismantling an entire BFE to fix a cable just to spite the mechanics who refused to help? That's next level petty, and I'm living for it. The coffee cans and Ziploc bags full of bolts labeled bolts with a Sharpie? Hilarious. The motor chief's head-spinning reaction when he saw the disassembled vehicle is something I'd pay to see. OP's it's a mechanical issue now. Clapback was perfect, throwing the not my job excuse right back in their faces. 3 weeks to reassemble it? Bet the mechanics never said not my job again. Love how OP's dad's mechanic mindset inspired this chaos. Got any other stories of outsmarting stubborn coworkers like this? I rented a fake apartment and accidentally got ProRevenge. This one's wild. Getting scammed out of a deposit by a shady Craigslist landlady is infuriating, but OP turning the tables by staking her out and demanding double the deposit? Badass move. The image of her shoving a wad of cash at OP while whining about her ruined Christmas is so satisfying. But the twist, finding out she was scamming tons of others and getting cheered by the victims at the police station, that's cosmic-level justice. The slow clap from the homeless girl and the crowd applauding OP's hustle is straight out of a movie. Love that OP kept a cool head and used their renters' rights knowledge to win. Also, props to the commenter for linking the news article, definitely checking that out. Anyone else ever catch a scammer in the act like this? My uncle took revenge on behalf of my parents. This uncle is an absolute legend. Going full private investigator to take down the creep who groped his sister and smashed a pitcher in his brother-in-law's face is next-level dedication. Pretending to be a crook to get the guy drunk and confess on video? That's some spy movie stuff right there. The fact that he knew the legal loophole about video evidence and still turned himself in to make it stick shows how smart he was. 6 years in prison for the creep and a $2,000 fine for the uncle? Totally worth it. It's heartbreaking that OP's parents went through that trauma, but the uncle's revenge made sure justice was served. Gotta ask, anyone else have a family member go full vigilante like this? Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed the stories in this episode. If you are not subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss future stories. See you guys in the next one.